Good morning. Welcome to Member Focus Monday. I'm Christina Schaefer, Social Media Manager for HAR. I am joined this morning by Representative, Sarah Davis. Welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're really excited to have you. You are actually our representative for this building.
Yes, you are in the heart of House District 134 right now.
Okay, awesome. So what does District 134 cover?
House District 134 is essentially the west side of Houston, mostly inside the loop, but I do go outside the loop, outside the west loop and pick up some areas there, but really the best part of Houston because I have all of the best shopping, all of the best restaurants, Rice University, the Texas Medical Center, icons of Houston.
Absolutely.
So I very rarely have to leave my district, to get anything really great because we have it all right here in my district. In fact, I see more members driving around and eating in my district probably than anyone else.
Yeah, well, I'm sure your constituents love that because they know where to find you.
That's right, yes.
Very good. So your district is pretty evenly split, correct?
Well, a lot of people, will call it a swing district.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily think of it as a swing district, but it's not a straight ticket voting district. So we have a lot of ticket splitters. So it's not like the district will go and elect a slate of Republicans one year or a slate of Democrats the next cycle. They very much pick and choose. So, in the 2018 elections, of
Correct.
course, in Houston, for the large part, Republicans were voted out of office. I won. I think I was polling about 25 or 26 points ahead of the top of the ticket. But my constituents are just very thoughtful, very educated, and very engaged. And so they vote for the person and for the candidate. There's not as much party loyalty as you would see maybe in some areas of the state. So on paper, I know it looks like a swing district, but I just think really we're just ticket splitters.
Yeah.
Even when we had straight ticket voting, that was never, I don't think, really as impactful in my area as in other areas. Of course, we don't have straight ticket voting heading into the 2020 election for the first time. So we'll see how that goes. But
Right.
This district is just, it's just, I think, one of the most unique districts. When I was first elected in 2010, I think it's funny because when I won, I heard that I was swept into office because of the big Tea Party wave in 2010. But I always remind people that Bill White was actually running for governor against Governor Perry. And so in this House district, it went for Bill White, but then down ballot for me. So again, everybody I think just just picks their candidates carefully.
Yeah. And they seem to really like you, right? This is the
Fifth term
Fifth
so
term?
far.
Yeah.
So far doesn't stop me from always having a challenger.
Sure.
But I think when you have an area like this, it's an easy district to look at and say, maybe I can beat Sarah Davis.
Yeah.
So we always have someone that's running against us, both from the left and from the right, which I think keeps me on my toes even more.
Yeah.
A lot of representatives will have maybe one race for their one big race, but we always have a big race.
Right.
But I think it makes you you have to really understand your district, and you have to really make sure you've got the pulse of what the majority of your constituents are concerned about. So
Right.
It's tough. But it's what we've chosen to do. So.
Absolutely. So there have been several Republicans that have announced either retirement or they're not just going to be seeking re-election. Do you think those are just kind of individual decisions, or do you think that speaks to something larger?
I think it's probably a little bit of both. I mean, some members are retiring because they've been there, and we always see a handful of retirements after every session. And we had such a productive session with public education reform and property tax reform that it would, if you were contemplating when you would retire, this would have been a time where you would sort of be going out on a high note, right? You were a part of a very productive session. But I think also there's some writing on the wall. From 2018, at least from the Republican side, we lost 12 seats in the House. And there are, 10 to 12 seats that could be seen as vulnerable. And so you probably had some members thinking that they may not be able to win their next general election. And so maybe you do go out on that high note of having a really productive session. But I definitely think, we say this all the time, that elections have consequences. And 2018 definitely, I think, showed how Texans are generally fed up with a lot of the legislature focusing on wedge issues or highly partisan issues, and really want the legislature to address core functions of government, public safety, education, infrastructure, those things. And so that was evident by such a loss in the House on the Republican side. And so I think, there's probably some members out there that weren't as confident going into 2020 based on their 2018 results, that they thought maybe it was time to move on to something else.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I just want to stop for a moment, and if you are watching and you have a question for Representative Davis, you can type it into the comments and we'll get to those in just a moment. Also, we are about to get into some topics that I know you're going to want to hear: flood, tax reform. So if you haven't yet, go ahead and share this so that your clients and customers can hear this information as well, because it'll be very beneficial for them to hear. I'm going to pause for just a second too to see if we have any questions that have already come in.
No math questions.
No. They typically don't give us math questions, but we'll see. Yeah, it looks like it's taking a second to come up there, so. Pardon me, just 1 second.
Technical difficulties.
Yeah, it does not want to show me them. Okay, that's okay. We'll get to those in just a second. I'm sure I'll figure it out in a second. So let's talk a little bit about flood. You were involved with some flood relief bills this session. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So you're in House District 134. My area, especially the area of Meyerland, Braeswood, Bel Air, were significantly impacted by Hurricane Harvey. And there were many residents in Meyerland that Harvey was their third year in a row to flood. Memorial Day, Tax Day, Harvey. So going into this session, flooding and trying to mitigate the effects of flooding was high on my agenda, but for a lot of other members, because it affected everyone in the Gulf Coast, but so many other members. So I was glad that it was seen as such a priority item for the House. It was something that had bipartisan support, and neither chambers really fought about it except for who was going to get credit for it, right? Which is typical between the House and the Senate. But there's legislation that is requiring the creation of a flood plan and flood maps for the state. In fact, the Texas Water Development Board is having stakeholder workshops all around the state. And we are getting one in Houston. Initially, for some reason, the Texas Water Development Board didn't have one scheduled for Houston, but we do have one in Houston. And so that'll be an opportunity for the public to come and let the folks writing the rules on these flood maps and our flood plan let them know what their opinions are. Harvey created kind of a hole in the budget that we passed the session before, so we had to spend around $2 billion from the rainy day fund to really, what I would say, backfill the budget, because we had higher education losses in terms of our universities and our buildings. Health and Human Services, that agency had to spend a great deal of money. So the state had to spend money responding to Harvey that it had not budgeted for. So we had to go back and fill those holes. But the legislature really wanted to focus on not just recovery of Harvey, but what do we do in the future? And so part of what there was like sort of a package of legislation that passed, but one of the big bills was Senate Bill 7, which no one needs to remember, what the SB or HB number is.
Right.
But what the importance of Senate Bill 7 is that it is an appropriation of money that will go to fund future flood mitigation projects. We have found, as many people know, there's FEMA.
Right.
And so but the locals government, like the city of Houston or city of Bel Air, or the county, Harris County, have to put up money in order to draw down those federal dollars for infrastructure projects.
Right.
And a lot of communities just don't have that kind of local money. And so part of what we're doing is creating this account so that our cities and our counties actually can access through grants or low and no interest loans to draw down, so that they have that, what we would call the local match, to pull down the federal dollars. And it's important for everyone to understand that right now, because we do have an election in November. I am not on that ballot, but we have some, the mayors and city council, but
Right.
we also have 10 constitutional amendments. And one of the constitutional amendments is it's Proposition 8.
Okay.
And that is what will create what's called the Future Infrastructure Fund, the
Okay.
FIF. And we'll need voter support to create that, and so that money can be appropriated as it's
Okay.
needed. So this is, I think, something that I'm hopeful that the voters can go out and support. I know I worked very hard on that $2.5 billion bond initiative because I think, and in my particular House district, that initiative passed overwhelming because we had so many people affected by flooding. But I think I would like for everyone to really think hard, and when they're going to vote in November, to support that constitutional amendment. Unrelated to flooding, there's a constitutional amendment regarding CPRIT, the Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas. And the health sciences and life sciences are such an important part of not only the economy of Houston with the Texas Medical Center, but of course the state. And so this constitutional amendment will extend. We call it CPRIT 2.0. So it will extend the bonding authority from original $3 billion to $6 billion.
Okay.
So that's another constitutional amendment that I think is really vital. Not only to cure cancer and to research cancer, but also generally for the Texas economy.
Okay.
But flooding was definitely on the forefront of so many members' minds, and I think we had a good session when it comes to that.
It sounds like it. It seems like a lot of the flood, the ways to flood mitigation, it seems like a lot of those ideas will take a very long amount of time. Are there any other short-term solutions? I mean, or is really just the funding the issue?
I think the funding is the issue. I think the most immediate thing you can do is vote for Prop 8 in November, so that money is there. But as we have seen, it's especially from the Fed side, the money getting to us just takes so long. And our hands are tied in a lot of respects in getting that money.
Yeah.
But I think for the short term, also, everyone needs to have flood insurance. If you don't have flood insurance, you need to buy it. And if you don't know if you have a flood insurance, you need to find out.
Yeah.
Because, of course, we are in hurricane season. But I would say for the short term, we definitely need to support the constitutional amendment.
Absolutely. And looks like I was able to get this up finally. I'm so sorry about that. So a lot of people telling you good morning this morning.
Good morning.
And actually I don't see any other questions at this time. So if you do have a question for Representative Davis, go ahead and type it into the comments and we'll get to it in just a little bit. So anything else on flooding aside from Prop 8 that we are looking for in November on that November ballot?
There were a number of bills passed. One that would create, I believe it's a task force to study all of the state laws that would need to be suspended in case of another Harvey. we'd never seen anything like Harvey, and it was the governor was being as proactive as he could, given dealing with everything that was coming in. But there were a lot of instances where we had to suspend, during emergency power, to suspend certain laws just because we needed some immediate action. And so we would like to gather a comprehensive list of what all may need to be suspended, so we're not kind of just searching in the dark to figure out how we get something done. I know that we did in the prior session, we did some work on allowing you to have your property reappraised,
Right.
when it is damaged or destroyed by a natural disaster. Because again, in the case of many of my constituents, they were rebuilding or had just moved in when the next hurricane hit,
Right.
and the next hurricane hit. And then we focused on debris removal, which is not something probably very many people thought about until Harvey. But then if you drove anywhere in Meyerland or in Bel Air, you could see the contents of people's lives sitting on their driveway or in front of their house. And so coordinating debris removal was something that we did not have a statewide perspective on. And so there was some legislation to create a task force to deal with that. We saw in Harvey, because it was hurricane season, we had our vendors. We had vendors that were in Texas working on debris removal, and then Florida got hit, and they were going to pay more. So then we would lose.
Losing a bidding war. Yeah.
Exactly. And so we need to not let that happen again. And so I know that there will be a task force studying debris removal and the best way is from a state perspective to handle it. But there's Harvey took up a lot of time, which was good. But we still did a lot of work in public education.
Absolutely. I was reading an article in the Houston Chronicle last week that Nancy Sarnoff wrote about Meyerland and about the number of homes that are still not there, the amount of lots in the Meyerland area. So it really seems like this is going to be, it is, not seems like, it's going to be a long-term issue.
It is, and I read that article too. It's obviously my hope that people are return, and many are, thank goodness, and are rebuilding. They're rebuilding their houses, 6 feet or 8 feet off the ground, but they are still beautiful.
Yes.
But I think it's important that community obviously rebuild and return to Meyerland. It is such a beautiful neighborhood with a very important community and population. So I'm glad to see that people are rebuilding, but of course, it is a problem.
Right.
People, and even the homes that didn't flood, there's just the stigma that if you're in that area, your home did flood. But Houstonians are resilient, as we have seen, and I think it is a long-term process. But I'm happy to see the number of people that are not giving up and that are returning and that are rebuilding, because it is a beautiful area, and the location, besides the flooding, is an excellent location if you're going into the medical center or going downtown.
So some short-term solutions. Vote for Prop 8.
Vote for Prop 8. Make sure you have flood
and
insurance.
getting flood insurance, absolutely. Last week, Senator Betancourt was talking about flood insurance, and somebody, one of our members, chimed in, do you live in a flood zone? Doesn't matter, get flood insurance.
Exactly, because there were people that didn't live in flood zones, had never flooded.
Right.
And then there were people that assumed they had flood insurance.
Right.
So
they didn't understand the difference.
Right.
I have homeowners insurance. What's the difference?
What's the difference? That's right.
Yeah, doesn't that cover flood? Right.
That's right.
So I do want to actually, speaking of Senator Betancourt, I wanted to go back and talk a little bit more about some things that he discussed with us last week in regards to tax reform. He mentioned the 7 cent savings. Can you explain that to us a little bit?
It's a 7%, or I'm sorry, 7 cents really for every $100 in valuation for your home.
Okay.
For the value of your home. And that was really part of the state's initiative to invest more money in state dollars in public education. Because we had seen it's getting really lopsided. Your local property taxes start to fund more and more public education, and it's really a joint effort between the state and your local governments. And we'd seen the state's share decrease, and your property. Now, of course, everybody loves that their property values go up, except for, of course, when you get your tax bill.
Right.
And then you don't like it. But as everyone's property values were rising, so were their property taxes.
Sure.
And so the way all these formulas work, it's the local share is first, and then what the school district can't fund based on their ability to tax, the state comes in and puts the rest. And so you see more and more property taxes funding education and less state dollars. So there was a compression within House Bill 3, I believe, which was the big public education finance bill. And so that increased the state's share. And so you're really looking at a couple $100 a year, obviously more. I think a couple $100 is based on the median of $187,000 home. In my area, that's going to be a little bit difficult to find. So the greater value your property has, the more savings you're going to have. But I think the real purpose or the greatest effect that the property tax reform is, because it was property tax relief, but then that kind of changed during session to reform, deals with a couple of components. First, a transparency component. If you look at your property tax bill, and I don't know, because everybody sort of has it included in their mortgage, a lot of people don't actually see it. But if you look at your property tax bill, you're going to see, let's say you live in the city of Houston. You're going to see HISD. You're going to see Harris Health, because we have a hospital district. You're going to see HCC, because we have a community college. And each one of these jurisdictions has a taxing rate. And so you will look at it, well, if you want to go and think, well, I think that the school district rate is too high, or I think the city, you would have to go to 5 or 6 different hearings and try and figure out. And most people don't. It's confusing and don't really know where to go to begin with. And so part of the bill was to make that more clear on your tax bill, so that you would know exactly where to go and when, if you wanted to make comment about your local tax rates. And I think the most important part of the property tax transparency bill was that there is a cap on the growth in property tax. So under old law, if a city wanted to increase its revenue by more than 8% of what it took in the fiscal year before, it could, but the citizens would be allowed to call for what's called a rollback rate election. Now, the citizens would have to get a petition, get enough signatures, and present it to the city council, and then there would be the election if they met those requirements. So which no one really ever did, right? I mean, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's very difficult to get people on the same page on anything. If you've ever attended a homeowners association meeting, you would see that. But what this is specifically for cities and counties, that rollback rate was moved from 8 to 3.5. So if the local government is going to collect more than 3.5% more revenue than it did in the prior fiscal year, they would need to get permission from the voters. So we say it's a cap, but it's not really a hard cap, but it just says if you want to collect more money, you have to get approval. And we've eliminated the petition requirement, and the election would be automatic. So it makes it more taxpayer friendly from my perspective. Absolutely. And I think from the legislature.
That's a very significant decrease. from
Yes.
the 8 to 3.5.
Yes, because, we've heard from all over the state that people's, property taxes are, taxing them out of their homes. And we do, obviously have high property taxes. But I have a degree in economics, and one of the first things we learn is there's no such thing as a free lunch. And so, we want services, and that's, we have to pay for them.
Right.
But the state obviously recognizes that the property taxes have become a significant burden on many people. And so, that was our effort to try, at the very least, slow the growth that we're seeing in property taxes.
Great. Rashmi asked if you know the latest development regarding flood control in the Woodlands area. I know it's outside of your district, but...
I am sorry, I do not. We would have to talk to the representative there.
Okay.
I apologize.
Audrey asked if homeowners' property taxes contribute towards public schools. How do renters contribute towards public schools?
Well, if you are renting a house or an apartment, somebody owns that, and that
Right.
property is taxed, by the same jurisdictions that I just mentioned. So the property owner is going to pass on those taxes to his or her lessee.
Yeah.
So
Tenants.
yes,
lessees,
the tenants
either way.
are tenants are paying for it. There's not going to be a landlord that says, "Oh, well, I have to pay, $40,000 in property taxes for this building, but I'm just going to pay it and out of the goodness of my heart."
Right.
So they're going to pass all of those taxes into the amount of the lease payment.
Very good.
So everybody is paying
Is paying for it.
Is paying for it.
Sure. Robert said, regarding property taxes, what are your thoughts about the effect of rooftop solar on home value?
I have not researched the effects of rooftop solar on home values, to be honest.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay.
But I do see more and more homes utilizing it. But I haven't seen any.
In regards to...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, realtors should know the answer to that.
Yeah.
Y'all tell me.
So if any of you want to type in the comments your thoughts on that home value, exactly. There's actually some really neat videos that I've seen out there about those solar roofs. If you haven't checked those out on YouTube,
I haven't, but I do see more and more people in the district,
right.
installing them.
There's a video of a completely electric home, and it's not, well, I'm sure there are some now, but it's not a real home. It's just the idea of going in and plugging in the car and having the solar roof and all of that stuff. So as Robert was asking, I'm sure it will affect home values, but in what way, and who's going to be getting into those homes?
Yes.
And want those homes, right?
Right,
Very
and
good.
we do have a lot of wonderful architecture in our district, and I've been in the homes of many constituents who utilize all sorts of different technologies.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, that looks
And
like
I have a large population of Tesla owners. as
Yeah.
well.
That looks like all the questions from our members. Is there anything else that you wanted to add or share with us?
I think that we've kind of covered the really big parts of this last legislative session. Now everyone's, just thinking about the future and what we're going to be looking at in the next session. I do a lot of work in healthcare. That's kind of my passion in terms of legislature. So I certainly would enjoy a session where we focused on healthcare, because I think that's something that affects obviously everybody.
Well, you certainly see it, being that the medical district is in your
Yes,
district.
represent the medical center, and I myself am a cancer survivor, which is really kind of where my passion, for healthcare comes from. So, but we haven't even been home for 3 months, so I think everybody's still trying to, get back into our jobs and reconnect with all of, with everybody that was home while we were up in Austin.
Sure.
But I certainly will be working on some healthcare issues in the interim.
That's good.
Yeah.
We'll be watching and waiting to see.
Yes, and of course with our wonderful chair of House Appropriations, John Zerwas, announced his retirement.
Yes.
So I'm interested to see how the budget will progress without Dr. Zerwas's leadership.
So just going back really quick, the Texas Water Development Board, those open sessions, we'll put up the website for that so that people can go. You actually were part of getting a session here in Houston, weren't you?
Yes, well, when I first saw the schedule of where the stakeholder meetings were, I realized there wasn't one in Houston. The closest one would be in Tomball, and I have nothing against Tomball, but it didn't seem to me to make sense that we would not include the city of Houston, or Houston, in the location for one of these meetings. So Commissioner Lake was very responsive to me and the concerns I think some others in the Houston delegation expressed, and so they ended up adding a meeting here in Houston.
And what are they doing exactly at these meetings?
Well, they're stakeholder meetings with regards to, and I haven't been to one yet, so
Sure.
I haven't witnessed it. But to help developing the flood maps and our flood plans. So I really wanted my constituents, because especially the folks in Meyerland that have been so affected, I really wanted them to have an opportunity to come and talk to the Water Development Board about the
Right.
projects that they prioritize, and that because once this plan is determined, there's a pot of money that will only be available to those projects. So it's important that we give feedback to the Water Development Board about what those projects are.
Very good. Yeah. So check those out. They have the dates on their website. You can go be a part of it and speak for your clients and customers, and of course yourself as well. All right. Well, that was it. Thank you again so much for joining us. This was wonderful.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So that's it for this Member Focus Monday. We will be back next week with Harris County Judge Lena Hidalgo. Same time, same place. We'll see you then. Have a great week.